I had under presentation, second paragraph, collective discussion regarding wastewater. Wastewater should be one word. All right. And then the second page, under the discussion, Mr. Moffett stated some grants have an income limit, and that's based on the average household income amount, and the average would be too high. I think we should add for some grants discussed tonight. Okay. You're good. I didn't want you to get jumped on. Errol?
It's like a competition on who can find my errors.
I'll make a motion for approval as amended. Is there a second? Second from Tom. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstain? Okay. Next item on our agenda tonight is Gastown special use permit, site plan, public hearing for requested extension to site plan special use permit to open a vineyard and winery on Mendon Ione Road. Due to COVID-19, construction was delayed, and there's requested also a square foot of the production building be increased from 70 by 30 to 60 by 70. Welcome back.
Hey.
It's been a while.
Yeah.
At least a year, right? So I guess we have a couple different planning board members from the last time you were here. So hey, I guess you give us a quick
Was that in the letter? 30.
rundown of proposed business and requested extension.
Sure, yeah, I mean, so the reason I was here, we were supposed to begin construction on our facility the spring of 2020. And when things started to shut down in March, we thought it prudent to hold off with all the uncertainty, not knowing when things would open up or what the heck was going on. So we waited a year, and now we're looking to start this spring. That put us a year behind, and then a year behind on all the requests that we made when we were initially given the timeline that we had.
And then you also have an increased size to the processing barn, right?
That's correct. Yeah, so the initial site plan, when we first started, 2 years ago, was a rough estimate as to the square footage we need to process that quantity. And then going through the final numbers, we needed more warehousing space, increase for production, and then for the tasting room itself, we just want to plan accordingly, given the new situation, to have people spaced out accordingly, and have separate tables and things like that.
That tasting room is phase 2 inside the building, if I remember correctly, right?
Yeah, all this is phase 2, correct?
And then phase 3, when you would be looking for the other building, you'd be looking to move the tasting room.
Yeah, that would be, the design we have is meant to take that space and use it for processing.
What's the capacity? Increasing the capacity of the tasting room?
No.
If I remember correctly, we had a talk that there was a discussion of the 2,400 square foot for the future farm market, and then we went and got a variance, correct?
That's correct.
That was back in 2019. We got the variance.
I believe it was definitely in 2019.
Okay.
It was in February.
And what size are you looking for the tasting room inside of the proposed processing barn?
Don't have the exact square footage with me. I'll look it up though. I think it was like 500 square feet. of the building itself.
It's gonna change your parking lot.
So our plan was, I think on the site plan, it has 6 spots that were, I don't know what Glenn labeled them on. We were just gonna, utilize those, actually put them in from the beginning.
So the future parking lot expansion, you're gonna.
Not the whole big section. I think there's 3 spots at the beginning when you pull off the driveway. I believe it was 3 on each side.
4 on each side.
4 on each side. We were gonna put those in.
So the tasting room stays the same. The enlargement of the building is mainly for production.
Production and warehousing, yeah.
So has Glenn looked at that as far as increase in wastewater?
Yeah, I ran it all by him. He said there wasn't any issue with his design for the septic or anything like that. He didn't see any issues or anything that would be of concern.
Are you still looking to have the canopy on the back?
Yeah, it's a cover for the crushed bed.
We had, I remember correctly, we had talked about some setbacks of 150 foot. That was for any events, if I remember right. Correct?
I don't know for sure. I mean, the building itself is
Yeah.
fairly far from the property line.
Yeah, section or condition 9, little I of the approval resolution says the farm winery must maintain a minimum of 150-foot separation between events and any existing or future residential property.
Okay. So we're not really talking about the process. Okay. Fellow planning board members, any thoughts and concerns? I know that for myself, COVID extension sounds pretty consistent with our new reality.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with the extension on the date. As long as this building is for processing, it doesn't turn into a farm market,
Okay.
because that's limited at 2,400 square feet.
Yeah,
I got a variance for the other one. That's my only concern.
yeah, that's correct. No, I mean, it's meant for processing. Majority of the space is designated for bringing the grapes. Like we said, the cover on the back is for our crush pad, because we can't have rain and stuff getting into the juice as we're processing it.
Is there a larger drawing than this?
I think Brent has
Not with the,
With the update.
not with the update, right? So, Don, how would we go about, what we have, the original plan shows the existing size building and has all the signatures from Department of Health, New York State, Monroe County Water Authority, and planning board chairperson on here. To amend the site plan, will we need a new site plan showing the larger building with all those signatures on it?
Yeah, the site plans need to be updated. Yeah, the letter I saw didn't say anything about a bigger building. We just talked about, that's why the resolution that's proposed just talks about the timeline. So, I missed that. Yeah, I mean, if you're just talking about timelines, you're talking about the special permit. If you're talking about changing buildings, now you're into the site plan.
Okay. Fellow planning board members, do you have any concerns with the larger building? As long as it's processing, sounds like we're pretty much, I think you talked about having a tasting room in there to start building your brand.
Yeah, I mean, with that,
Create the
we
buzz.
can afford to build 2 buildings at one time.
Okay. I think, well, let's go through the proposed amendment as legal counsel is put together. Read it, says, whereas in 2018, David Gaston, applicant, filed for a special use permit application and site plan application to operate a farm winery on his property on Mendon Road, south of the intersection of Hill Road and on Mendon Road, New York State, Route 64, Honey Falls, New York, 14472, tax account number 216-04-1-1 property. Said property comprising approximately 72 acres in the RA1 district in the town of Mendon, the town. Whereas on or about February 7, 2019, the town of Mendon additionally approved such application by way of resolution, including the 17 conditions of the resolution. And whereas due to the pandemic, the applicant has been unable to move forward with the subject development and thus has requested extensions for the same. Now therefore be it resolved that the resolution relating to the application and special use permit is hereby renewed, reissued, reapproved, and amended as follows. To the extent required, the application is hereby approved, renewed, reissued, reapproved, and amended to the extent approval as precisely set forth in accordance with the resolution, including such conditions set forth therein, except as otherwise set forth herein. And relative to condition number 12 in the resolution, which is hereby modified, the farm winery license must be applied for. Proof of the same be provided to the town by August 7th, 2021. And relative to the condition number 13 in the resolution, which is hereby modified, the farm winery license must be obtained for the same provided to the town by February 7th, 2020. Relative to the condition number 14, therein the resolution, such condition is modified to read as follows. After issuance of a C of O, annual sales of the present farmer shall be comprised of 51% of product, comprised primarily of ingredients produced on site. Except that so long as there is a bona fide startup farm winery at the property, this requirement shall not be applied until the date beginning February 7th, 2026. Farm winery license shall be obtained and proof of the same submitted to the town prior to obtaining a C of O or a C of C for the project. That's number one. So I guess having read that, before we go too much farther forward, we do have a public hearing on this tonight, correct? I think now would be a good time to open up the public hearing. We can open up the public hearing for the Gaston special use permit site plan public hearing for extension of the site plan special use permit and condition the extension of the square footage of the production building from 30 by 70 to 60 by 70. Any public wish to be heard? Okay, no public wish to be heard. I guess at this time, let's have some discussion among the planning board about special use permit. The extensions, I think, written in this draft proposal seems pretty straightforward to me. I think I don't have an issue with it. Nothing that I've heard, there's definitely no comments from the public. The buildings, if we revise this draft to state, that the tasting room shall be in phase 2, shall not exceed, or shall maintain to town amendment code for permanent farm market.
I don't know if that would say that. I
Okay.
would call it building a permanent farm market, you would need a variance. That's only-
Didn't you already get a variance?
On the other building, the phase 3, you got.
The first, when we construct a permanent farm market, we got a variance, 5,000 square feet.
Right. This is the processing.
Do we have the variance approval?
Yeah.
I mean, does someone have a copy of it?
Brent has the whole folder. Oh, that's planning board folder.
The variance was on the third building.
Correct. Yeah.
This is the second building, which they had not received a variance on.
Wasn't the plan always to have phase 2 building house the permanent farm market though?
That's what it was in the findings of fact.
Yeah,
That's why I was questioning the use of building.
yeah. So the plan, I think originally was to have this be the phase 2 building be used as the farm market until they built the phase 3 building. The last condition of our resolution back in 2019 says that a permanent farm market shall be limited to 2,400 square foot in size. Then it also says a structure of up to 5,000 square feet in size is permitted only upon approval of a variance from the zoning board of appeals. So clearly a bigger permanent farm market was contemplated back then.
But this building is not being used.
The portion of it now is going to be used for sale and tastings,
Which is a permanent farm market.
which is perfect. Yeah, a portion of it is dedicated to that. And then the plan is to build a larger building
Right.
in what your phase 3.
Variance for it.
We already received a variance.
So if it is, if we're calling this a permanent farm market, it would be a variance.
It's a processing building that, like I said, when we were here before, that a portion of it, we're gonna need to use to build a customer base, make some money, and then when we can afford to build the next part in phase 3, we can use a separate entity, reclaim the square footage, and make it into production.
Is there any way to get it online?
Jared Rush down on New York State 64. The old, it was recent.
I don't think so.
And I think it was after the winery.
Was it?
And I think his building, he separated, and physically separated his building for processing of the agriculture. And then he had his farm market in one side.
Hmm.
So-
Do we remember around what date the zoning board approved it?
This was approved on February 7th, 2019, so it would have been after that.
Variance was issued.
Wait, you have the zoning board one? Oh, I printed it for you this morning. Wow, you're good. Forgot about that. So you don't need me to pull it up then?
I guess not.
Oh, forgot I did that this morning.
Yeah, you got the special use permit there. Findings of fact 4B.
Right. That's what I was talking about. They contemplated sharing a building in phase 2 for permanent farm market and processing. I just want to see what this variance says. Real quick. Yeah, I mean, in this, think about how we should do this. I mean, will more than 2,400 square foot of the processing barn, more than half of it be used for the farm market? No. So I think he's under the square footage.
Pretty good way to look at it.
Yeah, we can say that in our condition.
So up to, no more than up to 2,400 square foot.
Yeah.
Be dedicated to phase one and phase two.
You said you're looking at.
I mean, I think that's, yeah, that, go with that, it's not gonna
I think that would be,
cause us any issues.
and I think we would need a updated site plan to be provided as, I mean, consider this a draft of the official file, you know, an updated one with new signatures. Parking out, and so on.
Are you looking to approve the site plan tonight also, subject to a final draft for your signature?
Yeah, that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Okay.
I don't see any. Well, we'll go back to the public hearing before we close it, assuming I don't hear anything different at the public hearing, that's why I'm leaving.
Mm-hmm.
So at this time, if we don't have any public wishes to be heard, I'm gonna make a motion to close this public hearing. Second by Earl. Further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Any abstained? All right, so the public hearing closed. So then we have a motion for then we would have a motion for the site plan approval, conditional on another site plan being provided for signatures.
Yeah, I'm writing that up for you.
And no more than 2,400 square foot being dedicated in phase two building for the tasting room for the permanent farm market.
I guess the one thing I'll bring out reluctantly is that the code says one structure shall be devoted to the sale of produce. So I assumed in the variance, in allowing the joint use of the phase two structure, they allowed that, but it's not very specific in those minutes.
But I think so. Another condition would be that before C of O or CSC on the phase three building is issued, that the phase two building tasting room must be abandoned. So there's one building basically. Right. You can't have two permanent farm markets on one.
Oh, yeah, that's fine.
So, you know,
No, that makes sense. Yep. I see what you mean. It has to be, we switch it to processing and then, yeah, that's better.
so yeah, before you move, you know,
Yeah.
obviously, it's not gonna be like that. It'll take
I understand.
time.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I see what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean, it could be the case though that they never get to phase three.
Yeah.
Then you have a joint building, in which case it doesn't really align with your code. Because the code says one structure shall be devoted to the sale of produce. So,
Well, that's. Oh, it's written now, what we have on file is written that way, right? And he's got it,
it's approved, yeah, right.
it's a processing, yeah, it's approved. Do we need to revisit seeker, or should we consider? Personally, I don't see anything that has been talked about tonight which would change our original environmental assessment. Either my planning
I agree.
board members wish to go through seeker. Okay. So I will make a motion for the conditional approval.
Hold on one sec.
Oh, okay. Usually I go too fast.
I know, right? I'm adding a seventh condition, so,
Must be in the YouTube videos.
Flustered.
um,
It's the millions of people watching.
Click, 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 like, like, like.
Does it get recorded or broadcast live?
We're practicing. It will be YouTube Live.
Oh.
It's not right now per se, is it? Well, it kind of is, Danny tells me, but there's no link yet. So like you can't go to the website and find the link yet. Next meeting. So if you want to come back, you can. You can be on video.
I just got all of my kids, you know, 'cause that was hilarious. They love to watch it. They're always like, what are you doing? I'm like, don't worry about it.
question, so say you build your phase 3 building. You're operating on the phase 2 building on processing and Permanent Farm Market. You get the phase 3 building out. How quick is that transition going to be? Because right now, if we say prior to issuance of C of O, you have to decommission the phase 2 building. I don't know if that really works for you. Or do you have the C of O and then,
I mean, we have to have some sort of overlap.
yeah, that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
like move stuff out into the field.
How quickly you think? I just want to put it, give yourself,
Conservatively, I'd say probably 6 months.
okay. Does that, you see what I'm saying? Instead of
Yeah.
saying prior to
Time to
issuance,
move on,
within 6 months.
Yeah, CFO's gonna come before you open it.
Sure, yeah.
Okay, so I added a 6th condition on the front page, and I added a 7th condition on the back page because that came up later. I also added another resolve here that comes after the 7th condition to amend the site plan.
Okay. You want me to read those in the record?
Yeah,
Okay.
so you're modifying the resolution.
So condition number 6 would be that the extent to the phase 2 processing barn is used as a permanent farm market. No more than 2,400 square foot be used as a permanent farm market. And further resolve that site plan be amended to permit the 60 by 70 processing barn subject to 1, submission of a final site plan consistent with the draft, acceptable to the town board chair, planning board chairperson to be signed by the chairperson. 7, that within 6 months of the issuance of a C of O for the phase 3 building, the permanent farm market be decommissioned from the phase 2 building. Sounds good to me.
So just so I'm aware, I have to go drive around and get all those signatures.
Yeah, I'm gonna get the site plans part of your special use permit, so.
Okay. Just want to make sure I'm ready for a second.
You know where to build it. So I will make the motion that we discussed. Second from Don. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Abstain. All right. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you.
Be in touch. Would it be a good idea on any project that we have a variance with, at least to be a copy of the variance on the planning board folder? Is there a problem with that?
I don't think there's a problem with that.
I mean, just mark it as a copy, I think.
Apparently I did that this morning already and forgot.
Tom was holding out on us over there.
I thought we asked. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Good, great project. Got any fruit on them yet?
We did last year, but we dropped it off. We just wanted the plants to grow. This year we will. Good year. Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Good one. Next motion, or next item on our agenda is the Highland Heights resub public hearing. 40 Windmark Way, requesting a 2-lot subdivision of lot at the corner of Windmark Way, and Falls, 5 Points Road. Niagara Falls consisting of 2.975 acres. The lot is owned by Bonnie Staples, 5 Points Road, tax account number 221.03-2-36.1. Anybody here for this application? Yes, who's coming up? Introduce yourself.
Good evening. My name is Rick Mel. This is my colleague, Matt Palmer, we're with BA Associates. And, yeah, we're representing Jennifer Sheridan. She's requesting approval to subdivide lot one of the Terrace of the Town Heights subdivision. Currently, the subdivision was created to cross, span Winmark Way, and so all we're doing is just separating the two areas. That's what we're requesting. Both areas on their own conform to current standards, so we really don't see an issue with the subdivision.
Yeah, when I looked it up, I noticed there's a couple of lots in that subdivision that went across the road. I can only think of one time that one other place in town that we've done that, and that's Tennyson Way for the septics, because it was an R5 and they made it across and they put their septics across the road. So I kind of did a little bit of research on the existing site plan. And just, so you're aware, those water services are served off of Route 15A. So there's, if my understanding is correct, Monroe County Water Authority won't run a water service for the new lot. Not that this, I mean, we're talking about subdivision, we're not talking about site plan at this time. So, just want to make sure they're aware it might be becoming, it'll be a hurdle.
Right, I don't think their plan is I think their plan is to put up a barn. So, which electric maybe, but they're not planning to sewer it. They're not planning to, it's not gonna be a livable space, is my understanding. And they do understand that any development would have to come back to get approved.
Okay.
And so they're well aware.
Yeah, even the barn, if I'm not mistaken, will have to come back.
Yeah,
It's like, okay.
they understand the site plan that it will be necessary.
Okay. Email code enforcement officer asking if there was any issues on, based off of what we had seen. Just wanted to make sure, it was a town road, says, dedicated town road built to the design standards in 1988. I'm sure you guys are already aware of that. So there's nothing issues on there with being an extra lot. Looking at the application. Don, is this with regards to seeker? Is this a unlisted action or is this a subdivision?
Yeah, I figured it'd be a type 2, but when I dug into it, it kind of looks like it's an unlisted action to me.
Then I guess what I'll do is go through the application and the seeker form at this time. We do have some comments from Monroe County Department of Planning and Development. They talk about, with the site plan subdivided from a larger piece of land, sometimes it's followed by another subdivision. If I'm not mistaken, this is RA1, so any further subdivision would have to go to the ZBA for a non-conforming lot. Applicants are encouraged to contact other county departments and non-county agencies to ensure all permitting requirements for this project have been satisfied. Subdivision, no water, no wastewater, no driveway cuts at this time, correct? Correct. Any questions on the planning board application from my fellow members?
Where is Jennifer Sheridan's place?
They live further down on Windmark. Live in the cul-de-sac. Windmark.
They plan on purchasing that chunk of land in between.
Not that I'm aware of. Because that one right next door is that same deal.
Right, exactly, across the street.
You know, my understanding is just that lot one, vacant lot, we're very interested in.
And then, yeah, because you brought up, you want to build a barn house. They couldn't build a accessory structure unless you had a principal structure on the property. If you combined, what that other lot combined with this, then you would have a principal structure. Right, the house. Just want to point that out.
Right. Would they be able to do it with the variance?
That would be up to the zoning board of appeals, the application, that's. And there is applications for that stuff. Okay. Any questions from fellow planning board members on the seeker form?
Just kind of part one of the project location. 300 Gamer, should be 1,300.
1300 Windmark.
That's just 300 Gamer. Should be 1,300 qualified wage.
1300 Windmark.
No, 1,300 qualified wage.
All right, if I change that on this fix.
Yeah.
Oh, it's thick.
Still got it.
There's no questions from my fellow planning board members on the seeker or the application. I think at this time would be appropriate to open up the public hearing. So we'll open up the public hearing for request of 2 lot subdivisions. A lot at the corner of Windmark Way and Hind Falls 5 Points Road, consisting of 2.975 acres zoned RA1. Any public wish to be heard? Okay. My answer to subdivision is pretty straightforward. I mean, Tom, you got something written in your plan.
That lot, on the new lot, the lot R1A, we put a note on it, just site plan approvals required prior to issuance of building, never permitted. And we need a signature line for the planning board chair.
Okay.
Okay. If no public wishes to be heard at this time, I will make a motion to close the public hearing. But, no, any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstained. Okay, so, with regards to seeker, I think anything on here would be a small impact or no impact. At most, we would see a little more traffic on the road. But I don't see anything major on here. If there's no further discussion from my fellow planning board members, I'll make a motion for this unlisted action for a negative declaration in regards to seeker. Second, no. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed and abstained? Have to.
Yeah, they even signed for you, Fred.
Okay. So if I remember correctly, Tom, you had two conditions on this. One for the planning board chair signature to be added to it, and the second was a note saying that site plan approval is required for any building.
No prior issues.
Any concerns with those conditions?
No?
Tom, you wish to make a motion, or Earl, do anybody wish to make a motion for conditional approval? No, no, I don't want to make a motion. You want to second it?
Fine.
Okay. Any further discussion? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Yes. I still can't. Yeah. The original application on this, they asked for, why do you have that?
How do you know that?
This one Mark Way, and they got denied. And it said they wanted it RA1, and now all the parcels around it are RS30. And this one's RA1. No.
Because.
Danny, what do you want to do with this? Should we move it right down there? Because I think they have to use the,
Remember when they ran that.
yeah, it'd probably be okay.
Next item on our agenda is the presentation. For insurance, you have to, from the fire department, this is all.
Oh, no.
Fire service water supplies.
Yeah.
Sit back. Got Pete. I'm Pete. I'm Brent. Nice to meet you. Sam, nice to meet you. I hope you have a back and forth on some applications.
Wait, you're Pete Chester?
I am.
You had two open building permits, we can never get a hold of you. Honestly, that's nobody.
It's like people that have open warrants.
Oh,
They
my
have
God,
big-
we call, they don't care.
Yeah, they're all-
Everything is equal. And higher.
Yes. They ignore me.
So I'll just introduce, appreciate the opportunity to go through and appreciate what's going on here. We're having all sorts of issues to try to continue on with our service to the town with the fire department. I'm Tim DeRusso, I'm past chief, past commissioner of the Mendon Fire Department, and currently the safety officer. This is Chief Pete Kester, who is also here and on the phone. Is Dave Hood, can't see you, but he's right here. He's the chief of the Hornet Falls Fire Department. So we're all here so we can ask and address questions and those kind of things, and just give you a brief overview on what the code has changed and what that really means, and really how we're trying to make sure that we can still provide services to our town folk, and doing that in a responsible manner, but at the same time, trying to keep things safe so that we can actually do our job without jeopardizing us. So in May of 2020, and I'll try to be as brief as I can talk all day. Technical difficulties, okay. In May of 2020, the New York State Fire Prevention and Building Code changed, adopted a new standard, new versions, new items, and there is a very clear path in that fire code that talks about required fire water supplies for not only commercial buildings, but also 1 and 2 family homes. So what we're talking about and solely talking about here are detached 1 and 2 family homes. So a dwelling, a house. It's not a barn, it's not a, a building like this or anything else. And as we know, we don't have public water throughout the town of Mendon. There's a lot of areas in the town where we have very, very long driveways and quite long distances to get from where we have to come from home, get to the fire station, from the fire station, get to the fire, and then from that point go out and do our job. So the code now talks about that requirement as establishing fire flows in gallons per minute. Gallons per minute, and the target that's been discussed is 1,000 gallons per minute for single family homes, and that's got all sorts of code documentation from here. But essentially, it's recognized in the code that we don't have water to replace. Or in some cases, you might have a water line and it's 150 years old and the pipe is about 1.25 inches or 2.5 inches, and it's supposed to be a 6-inch pipe, but it really doesn't flow what it's supposed to. So in order to supplement that, the state is allowed and very specific to adopt and use the standard, which we've had for quite a while, but it's recently been amended. It's been in the code for quite a while. A standard on rural water supply or water supplies for suburban and rural firefighting, which essentially means how else can you get water to the scene? Now, in the simplistic days, we just said, let's bring tank water. And tank water was sort of viewed as, okay, I guess that's something. But now we start looking at what the fire flow requirements are, and those requirements are much larger than the 1,000 gallons of water that we carry in each of our trucks. So what this does in this standard is it talks about the different types of, or different ways that we can go through and obtain water. We can either get it from a fire hydrant with hose, which means then in the code today, there's a requirement that says you have to be within 600 feet of a fire hydrant in order to make that work. Well, that's not going to really work every place, certainly in the town. We have more holes than 600 feet. So why penalize somebody if it's more than 600 feet? But many times we have 4,000 or 3,000 or some ridiculous amount of length that we have to try to go through and use. What we've done in Mendon and in Honeyway Falls is changed our water supply hose from 3-inch to 5-inch. So it's like a portable water main. The stuff is great, except when you gotta pick it up. The other thing that we didn't recognize, don't think about all the time, but we do now, is that it takes water to fill the pipe up before any water comes out the other end. And it's about a gallon per foot. We just thumbnail that, it's pretty close. So if we've got a 3,000 foot hose lay that we have to use, we need 3,000 gallons of water just to fill that hose up in order to get water to come out the other end. So we've changed operations in the Mendon Fire District, and Honeyway Falls has done the same in that we used to use our tanker to shuttle water from a hydrant or another water source someplace and then come to the scene and then drop it in a portable pond, and then we pump it from there to the scene. The problem with that we found is the first two vehicles that get to the fire, typically a pumper from Mendon or Honeyway Falls, and then another pumper from Mendon or Honeyway Falls, we each carry 1,000 gallons of water. That gives us about 1,000 gallons to play with, which is not enough when we make our initial attack on anything other than a small 25 by 25 foot building. So what we've changed to is putting the tanker, our tanker goes up to the scene now. So now we have 1,000 gallons of water plus 2,000 gallons in the tanker, plus another 1,000 gallons that we have from another pumper, if it makes it up to the scene. So in reviewing that and looking at our past fires, like the real things that have happened, like West Bloomfield Road back in October, was it? October. All sorts of other things that we've had. We use way more than that because typically we don't know about the fire. It takes us a long time to get there. It's remote. We have to lay hose lines. Then we can't transport people back and forth on the driveways because there's a big water pipe sticking in the middle. So we have to have 5 people move all that stuff over. So it's quite a challenge to us. What the code has done is allowed us to use an NFPA standard, that red document I was talking about, that tells us we can do different ways to get water to the sea. And we've come up with all sorts of different arrangements to try to transport water to the scene in the first 10 minutes. We can't do it. It just is just a fact. We can't get enough water to the scene to do what we have to do without losing water and make a continuous source going through. So both fire departments that service the town and most other places around say we can only do so much. We can only make certain things happen, but we need something else because without it, we can't do our job. Our biggest problem is getting to a scene, having a little bit of water to think we're going to be able to do something. And we go through and we start the attack and we start doing things. And now we're inside these buildings, sometimes with larger homes, hundreds of feet, literally hundreds of feet. And then we run out of water. That's not bad if you're standing outside. When you're inside and you're crawling around in smoke and you've got fire coming at you, that's a really bad situation and it's very, very unsafe for us. So what we have to do is figure out another way to deal with this. So in review of the code, there's a whole bunch of code sections here that basically shows us, yes, there is a requirement for water supply for homes. It's referenced in the code. Yes, we can use this standard, but it's really blurry in my eyes. But we can't continue to use apparatus tank water because number one, it's not enough, and we have to do something else. So that standard and that code section allows us to look at what's available, how you can do it, Can we use hydrants? That's the preferred method. If there's, 500 feet away or 1,000 feet away, we prefer to get a water hydrant from the county water system, which is pretty strong in this area. But if we can't do that, what's our next choice? We are willing to go through to continue using longer hose lays, using that 5-inch hose, but we need some place to get water. And the other way to get that is from either ponds, whether it's a line pond or whatever else it is, but that has to meet certain requirements. And this, we all think about this last summer, we have to dry. We have to have that year round. So ponds are an answer. We can also use cisterns, we can use tanks, but we're not the ones that are putting it in. It's usually the building applicant for a home that's putting that in someplace. Now, when you look at those numbers, the Insurance Services Office essentially says they don't recognize a water supply unless you have at least 30,000 gallons. That's just a nice size pond, which is okay. And that, how they get that number is a 250 gallons per minute times 120 minutes for 2 hours. But 30,000 gallons, if you try to put that in tanks, just to give you an idea, like a underground gasoline tank or one of those gasoline tankers that's in the neighborhood of 8 to 10,000 gallons, that's 3 of those. So that's a pretty good size. So we say, well, what else can we deal with? And what does the code allow us to do if we have other protection needs, such as residential sprinklers, alarm systems, close on the road versus far away back, 1,500 or 2,000 feet off the road. If a house is sitting on a road and it's 100 feet back from the public road, we can park our other apparatus and we can walk to that road or to that house and do our job. When it's a long ways back, we can't. We have to actually physically get vehicles back there and people. When everybody else comes, they end up walking. So now you're expecting them to go through and do one of the worst physical challenges that you do as firefighting. But before that, we want you to walk 1,000 feet with 40 pounds of crap on your back and a whole bunch of other things, and then do your job and then do it again and again. So we have some issues that are now being mandated on the fire service for safety, that we have to make sure that we're doing things in a safe way. It's no longer the days of, everybody's a firefighter, you're going to get hurt. That's just part of the job. It's no longer part of the job. It's not acceptable to have that kind of risk. So what this document does, gives us a path on how we can get from this section of the code, which is the fire code, that says there's a water supply requirement for 1 and 2 family homes, that you can use the reference standard. The water supplies are required. We can use this other standard in a different fashion. So we can use ponds, and somebody want to put a swimming pool in with a pipe, a dry hydrant, so we get water out of the swimming pool. Great, as long as they don't drain the pool, as long as they have that year round, we're fine. So this is just some of the documentation that we provided to Corey's office, just to help document where the need is. It talks about 600 feet right here.
Are you talking new build?
Yes, and I do want to make sure that that's very clear. Very clear. This has got nothing to do with anything that's existing. No retrofit, no anything else. It's only for something brand new coming in front of the town for a building permit. Presumably, let's just, the planning board, I'm not familiar with what you do other than look at divisions and other things, but if someone comes in, wants to put something up, I looked at the website, there's a whole bunch of criteria. Doesn't say anything in there about water supply. It's a big surprise for someone if they came in, everything's all going well, and all of a sudden they go, "Oh, I'm ready to go," and we got to have a water supply. Where'd that come from? Well, there's a code that Corey's office says is enforced, and this is what it means. but that's sort of an aftershock, I guess. So that we're trying to make sure that everything's out in front, everybody can see what it is and understand what it is. So what we're attempting to do is put down enough information for a clear understanding of, instead of trying to figure it out every single time and doing something different every time, let's try to standardize on it that makes sense. But at the same time, if it doesn't work because it's a unique situation, you can always try to come up with another way to make it work. So that's what this document does. We're very concerned that we get this in the loop and in running with the town. Just because we're behind the 8 ball, we just don't have the manpower anymore. It's expensive for us to try to deal with this by ourselves from a, expensive from a risk standpoint. And
When does this become code?
it's already code now. May of last year, of 2020. I don't know the exact date, May, whatever it was. But it's for 1 and 2 family dwellings. And what we're looking, and where this document leads us to, is this page right here. And we can make all sorts of pretty pictures later on so people can figure it out and understand that. But it's essentially, we have 3 conditions. Is there a fire hydrant or a dry hydrant? Everybody know what a dry hydrant is? It's just a 6 or 8 inch PVC pipe or steel pipe that goes into a pond or tank or something else. And we come in, hook up the suction hose. Takes us more time and effort because we have to take the top suction hose off and hook it up compared to what it is on a county hydrant. But if there's more than 600 feet from a hydrant or a dry hydrant, well, actually, I'm sorry, if it's within 600 feet to either one of those things, happy, as long as there is at least 1,000 gallons per minute coming from the county water line, or 1,000 gallons from the dry hydrant with a pond that has 60 minutes duration at 1,000 gallons per minute. That's 60,000 gallons. It's a big pond, pretty good sized pool. We have another situation where maybe it's within 1,000 feet. So now keep in mind, the code specifically talks about 600 feet. We're like, we can go further than that. We can do that. But we just don't want to go unlimited forever. So we're saying, let's put in that hydrant or that dry hydrant within 1,000 feet. So if you're within 1,000 feet, you're over the 600 that's code mandated. And you put in a residential fire sprinkler system in the dwelling, in the house. Basically, the residential sprinkler system's only going to use like 25 to 30 gallons per minute for like 10 minutes. We don't have any fire. So the code allows us to drop the flow rate from 1,000 gallons per minute down to 500. It cuts it in half, which we think is great because we don't have a fire, we don't have an issue. Therefore, let's drop the water supply. So there could be situations where there's no water. That means, what's a nominal 10,000 gallon tank? It could be relatively small pond, and it could be just like one tank or a big concrete cistern or something like that. It could be if somebody's got a creek, albeit I know you got to go through and get all the DEC approvals and all. They could put a little dam up so they make a little pond area so you have a dry hydrant. All sorts of different options that you can do. So that's the second option. And then what happens when we have to start doing what we would call long legs? 1,500 feet. 1,500 feet is quite a long ways. We're saying if we're going to go and that hydrant or dry hydrant is over 1,000, but around 1,500 feet long, we're going to say you need to add sprinklers so we don't have a big fire. You need to have an alarm system so we can learn about it a little bit earlier. And then the flow rate again, because of the distance, that drops down to 1,000, and the actual size of the tank gets dropped down from the 60,000 if you don't have sprinklers at all. And then we're looking at what happens when we're over 1,500 feet, because we're going to run into that. It's just a fact. We know we're going to run into it. We don't want, there's too many different situations. We'd rather not have that or see it. If it is the only thing that is available, let's just say it's 2,200 feet. And they want to go through and sprinkler and put in an alarm system, we would come up with a way, working with the chiefs of both departments and the building inspector, to say, and maybe it's on a public road instead of way back. We can make that work, we can come up with a way to figure that out. But we have to know about it on a case-by-case basis. So that just helps us sort of simplify how much water it is, how much water needs to be stored, how far away is it from the house. And this is measured to the front door, because that's where the code is. So what we're asking here, in the simplest of forms, is to help support us so we can do our job in the town with 28 Falls and Mendon. We work together. If they go to a fire, we go to it with them. If we go to a fire, they come to our fire, and we're always together. We're attached to the hip. We have to be. We cannot go through and deal with it ourselves in any one department. We have to call all sorts of other people in. Even, we don't do it just with us in 28 Falls. We have to have 3 or 4 other neighboring companies to come in. If we have to go tanker operations like we do in West Bloomfield, we had 10 tankers from, how far away were they?
Bristol was the furthest.
No, that's a long time just driving, just to get here, much less use the water. So that's why it's important for us to continue to look at this for new construction going forward. And we would ask your support, maybe depending on how you guys operate, get some way to simplify this in little graphic terms so people can see it. So when they're doing future, developments and/or whatever they do in a new house, they can at least understand it, and it's not a surprise. We'll be the bad guys, but we need it because we're the ones that use it. Without it, we just can't do it. We can't do it anymore. We can't continue on. We can't get a tanker big enough to still make it up in the area that we need to get into. So I would try to cut it short because I know it's late. That's generally the gist of the whole situation, and we would ask if there's questions, we can address those.
I want to ask Corey, have you enforced this?
So we haven't had a situation on a new build yet, John, that's required us to,
Since last May, you haven't had.
we've only built 8 houses this year. Each one of them had a public water service. But what's the required flow out of a public water service? Well, that would be better asked. That from Department of Health who approves plans. They require 500. And
In this, I know on the east side of town, with very, very few exceptions, maybe Mendonshire, very few exceptions, do we have less than 1,000. Most of it, we're on 12-inch, we got the big reservoir, we got some 10-inch and 8-inch lines pretty much everywhere. We are way in excess of probably 2,000 to 2,500 gallons per minute from most hydrants. In the village, the other part of the town, going up Pittsburgh Mendon Center Road, it's a different pressure zone, lower pressure, but we still have a lot of water. That's all we care. As long as there's a lot of water there, we can make pressure with the pumps that we have.
On an in-house sprinkler system, given the footage from the pipe that is made, what size pipe do you need for 1,000 feet or 1,500 feet? So are you going to need a 4-inch line coming from the main to support that?
Oh,
sprinkler
no.
system?
Yeah, so like if you did let's just say it's a 2,500, 3,000 square foot house. You only design for 2 sprinklers operating, which is, they have sprinklers now that are covering 16 by 16 foot rooms with only 8 to 12 gallons per minute each. And you only calculate 2 sprinklers, you don't calculate them all. So typically, to answer that question, depending on what the pressure is, because there's variables, a 2-inch plastic service is more than enough to go from 1,500 feet from the public water main, that's what it is, up to the house to make the sprinkler system work. So if you can make the plumbing system work, the sprinkler system should work without any problem.
Even if you're on a well-based system that's pushing.
On a well, depending on how it's set up, depending how strong the well is, depending on how big your well receiver is, you could use that, but typically what most people do is they buy a poly tank. You don't have to do anything special with any of these things. It's just plumbing stuff, but it's just a different fixture. There's no special listings or anything else, but you can buy a poly tank. They make them now that are 28 inches or 29 inches wide and about 4 feet long. So you can fit them down a set of basement stairs. And there's a small little electric pump that's 220 volts. It takes a 20 amp or a 30 amp 220 circuit. You fill it up with your regular well water. You hook the 1-inch pipe or a 3/4 inch pipe that goes out to the sprinkler system. Bring a pair of 10s to that, hook the thing up, and you're done. So even with a well, it's very easy to do. And the tank size is only typically in the range of 300 to 400 gallons. So it's smaller than a fuel tank.
For a sprinkler, a residential sprinkler system?
Correct.
What does that cost, you think?
Depends.
Yeah, the size of the house.
Depends on the size of the house and all of those other kinds. The national average right now, again, I think it's $1.35. If I would be surprised if it was more than $2 a square foot. And if it is, they're only doing it because they know they can get you and they're charging more for it, which happens. I'm not going to say that, especially we're finding in areas that are super, California has a code requirement. Maryland has a code requirement. A bunch of other places have code requirements. When competition comes in, it drives those numbers down. I don't think we'll see those $1.35 square foot per square foot costs. But again, it depends if you're building a big place with giant, arch ceilings versus.
So what we're talking about is you can put in a 60,000 gallon pond or cistern, or you can put a 300 gallon poly tank in your basement with the pump.
Correct.
And that meets it.
Right.
And we don't get too much into we don't get too much into code. Actually, our legal advice is we get too much into code and we should start steering
Yeah, I
away
mean,
from it.
the planning board, if you think about it, it's really, you're looking down on a site.
Yeah.
From the sky, essentially, you're looking at a map and you're planning the site. I'm more concerned about that than, they don't have authority over the building code, so to say, but our fire marshal does, and in order to get their building permit, they can go get a site plan all day from us. They're not getting a building permit until he's satisfied and he meets these codes.
What we do to support is we say, we're not signing the plan until you have the fire marshal.
Right.
Or the highway superintendent signature. We're a team, we're the last signature, so, and we don't need to talk about that.
Right.
And we've gone through that recently.
And sometimes those paths will mix. For example, if you need a 60,000 gallon pond, that's going to impact the site map. And
Sure.
now we're together.
Yeah.
So yeah, sometimes it directly impacts us. Other times, it's something that will impact the potential issuance of a building permit. But really, I can see something like this being a guideline, something we have on our website or that we can give to applicants.
Right, and design criteria, anyway.
Yeah.
We talked about.
Yeah, you said you guys are looking down. We're looking down too, like,
Yeah.
where we can get water. How we can do our job without,
And that's what I'm
pretty much
thinking,
done.
is we feel
Yeah.
if we introduce this into the part of our review, you have to get a water supply, look at these documents and, well, have the fire department signature.
Send the site plan to the fire department. Give their option.
Well, don't they get site plans?
Some specific ones they do, not all.
And understanding that, Tom, I do understand, and that has historically been an issue because not everybody's interested in some of the things that we are. But what we're trying to do here is, let's see if we can capture, you know, the majority, 60, 70, 80% of normally what runs in. It's like, if we can put those basic rules in, at least everybody knows what everybody's looking for. Then when we get to the oddity that's on a slope with cutback roads and all the other kind of things that you can't put a pond on, and we can't make these three different ways work, what other ways? Now we got to put our heads together and try to figure out how to do that. All we're trying to do is make that, because I think it'll be more successful, and quite frankly, it's less work for everybody.
We have a note on the plans that says, we have lots of notes, you know, we're not responsible for water, quality, we're, EPOD, so on and so forth. You know, maybe another note, add to our general notes. The resident is aware that the water supply must be supplied. And there's different ways. And if they're gonna do it with a pond or a cistern, they have to come back to us and show it to us, or they can do it another way.
I think honestly, you know, I've been talking with Tim and some of the other members of the fire service over the past year about this and how, you know, it's gonna impact things. And it's kind of shocking, maybe somebody that's gonna build a new house, I gotta do what? So that's why I think for informational purposes, I just wanted to have them here so that everybody can hear what's coming down the pipe.
You won't see a lot of houses on these back roads. Or that it's gonna start driving people to get water. They're finally gonna say, well, we might as well pay with water now.
That's one of the biggest contentions in town is we don't have water service to the town board.
Yeah, it should definitely, this should definitely be presented to the town board. Yeah.
Presented to the town board, yeah, because I think we would have to change our notes and design criteria, and that comes from the town board.
Mhm. It's more in their purview than the planning boards. I mean, I see why you would want the planning board
Yeah.
here also, utilitarian wise, but from a process standpoint, the town board should see it. One of the suggestions might be this page 2, you could even just hand this out with site plan applications. And so people know these are your options.
Yeah, and we have standard details in the design criteria. You can make the notes and they can stick it right on the detail page.
Right.
So the homeowners are aware.
For ponds and swimming pools in February when it's at 9 degrees out, how is that gonna be any
We'd
good?
have to have a dry hydrant next to it.
So, yeah, so part of that standard, it does, that other red standard, 1142, it says if you have a static water source, in other words, no pressure, it has to be from a dry hydrant for us to be able to use it. Period. So there's ways to design them with embankments, you know, different ways to get them under very, you know, depth of water cover is the biggest thing, so you don't get ice going all the way down. And how deep the pond is. If you put it 2 feet, probably not gonna work. But
I think we said that they don't really have over the years. Oh, yeah, we put it in. And I think you did one over at the Wilmot.
Yeah,
site,
Wilmot,
right?
we did
When I
one
first
down.
came on, they were.
Yeah, we got to the truck down and hook up to it.
yeah, we do. We go down there every year just to dry flush it and just make sure that everything's.
That was my next question, is who maintains them? Homeowners won't.
The dry hydrants?
Yeah.
You're not gonna maintain dry hydrants on private property though.
No, we wouldn't maintain it.
No, but we would go and test to make sure that it's working, and then what we would have to do is if there was a problem, we would have to come back to town code enforcement to say, we need this, and oh, by the way, that pond and that dry hydrant, even though you put it in, we'll use it for everybody. We're not gonna say it's only for you, we're gonna use it for anybody.
Right. You tested on day 1, but 5 years down the line,
We'll go through, we go through on the dry hydrants, it's that important to us. To go through and request permission from the landowner to go on the site, and what they call backflushes, we take water and squish it down through and get the junk out of the strainer. And then we actually use it and flow 1,000 gallons through it to make sure that it's working.
So there would have to be an easement on these site
Yeah.
plans.
It's an agreement though.
An agreement. Well, yeah, access, essentially, yeah. And we'd have to put it logging on the driveway. All the way back.
yeah,
to
we
the
just went
driveway.
through this whole thing with,
Yeah,
with an application.
Which,
Which, by the way, all of that, all of those standards and what they meant is actually in the standard that says, I have to be able to drive a fire truck to it, because I can't. If it's down below and down out in the field, you can't take a 45,000 pound pumper and stick it down in the field and expect it to come out full.
Or you put a 500-gallon poly tank in your basement, hook it up with a pump. I wonder which way we're going. I mean, I heard the company's on board with this. Insurance free.
Commercial buildings are shut, sprinkler systems.
All right, but I
First time they have a problem in the house, guess what? So you shut off.
so, but that's gonna be in the code because it's not gonna be any different than the backwater sewer check valves.
Right now, we don't expect it.
Well, but that's what I'm saying, is you won't inspect it.
Right. So a question was brought up, does the insurance company, do they recognize this, and do they give us premium breaks or anything else and stuff on here? So every insurer is different, just go figure. But yes, they do typically recognize that, they drop the rates, and they do see and accept the reduction in fire flows, even the Insurance Services Office, ISO, that basically gives different ratings for different fire districts in different parts of the county and different parts of the country. They do recognize sprinkler systems as allowing to reduce the flow from this to some number, typically 50%. Hopefully that answered your question. I know Chief Dave is on the phone and Chief Pete is here. I guess I would see if they've got any questions or things that they wanted to add in. Pete, I don't know,
If you just look at the most recent example of October, that was a barn, so that doesn't really apply. But if that was the house, we would have a problem.
we would have been deep. I was driving a fire truck to pump for the first pump, and we lost water 4 times in the first 10 minutes.
We had a 10-mile loop for the tankers. And some of them were going down Landing Road, which was a wonderful road to drive a big truck down. So it takes time. It takes a lot of time. And the reason there was so much damage to that building was because of water supply. If we had a static water supply or hydrants or water, we would have made it a completely different fire. So this is the most recent example of why this is.
Yeah, this is required for garages, barns, unless it's classified solely as agricultural, and it doesn't apply.
I would offer, if you guys hear me, that not only does it take time, but there's a lot of components in setting up these extended water supplies, and there's a lot of opportunity for error, and that can slow down the operation, and again, we run into problems. So I think that's important to recognize. And again, the theory here is this is not for anything existing, it's only for new. The goal here is to get this information out so it doesn't become a surprise to somebody when they're already far along in their design or their construction. And ultimately, it allows us essentially to do our job and be much more effective in, frankly, fighting fires and saving property versus trying to find the water to be able to do it. And so that's why I know both Chief Kester and Chief Derbyshire and I are strongly advocating.
So I think maybe we communicate with the town board to watch this presentation and consider revising our design standards and code as applicable to meet these new requirements.
Yeah, probably design standards or you can even add in a question on your application, on your application forms for site plans and subdivisions. Have you examined and do you comply with the standards for this?
I think we put it right in the standard note, the town amendment general notes.
But if you put it in the application form, they're gonna know right off the bat.
Yeah.
They can't be surprised because it's in there.
Yeah, and keep in mind, this is only addressing, I guess, as I said before, single family homes.
Yeah.
Somebody decided to put up a bunch of townhomes, if that was ever permitted or whatever, or a commercial building, that's a different thing. We have to look at each one of those.
Mm.
So if they put up a 20,000 square foot, whatever, little manufacturing plant or something like that, or something, it would have a different requirement than these right here.
Can I assume the contracting construction community has been brought up to date on this stuff? Or are they?
Everybody's learning things every day. Sometimes people
Because
know about it,
they're
sometimes
gonna
they
be
don't.
advising their client to say, look, here's, if you want to go 900 feet up the driveway, here's the ramifications.
Contractors. Don't worry about it. We've had them tell them, don't worry about that stormwater pond. You don't have to put that in. I mean, stormwater pond. We see applications that are 0.99995 disturbance because everybody fuckers up at a grass line swale. I can't imagine what's gonna happen here when we start talking about 30,000 gallon cisterns and stuff, but I think making sure they're aware of it up front and droughts and present it to the town board, we recommend. It doesn't need to, well, I definitely recommend you present it to the town board, because they need to change the design standards. We can support as we can, but I think having them change what we put out in the applications is the way to go.
Price of that field been probably taken for years, it's dumped all this 50,000 square foot.
I think it's somewhere between, the question was that, the prefab tank with a pump and everything else, I think it's in the neighborhood of 2,500 to 3,000. But you can, I know, I've done other things that I've brought in, like somebody put in a concrete 1,500 gallon tank cistern for feeding the horses. And we took a suction right off of that with a piece of PVC pipe and put in a little pump and hooked that up, and it was like $800. So
300,000.
No, it's not. No.
Who maintains that pump and cistern? The homeowners?
Yeah. And there's not a lot of things to maintain there. There's very few working parts. I mean, the best thing to do is just, other people make it just part of the regular domestic water system. So every time you flush the toilet, water's going through it. There's all sorts of different ways to deal with it. Think of it as another plumbing system that's just doing a little sprinkler that comes down or it's concealed in the ceiling or on the sidewall. And
I see that, but I'm just thinking, that tank sitting in there for years, you're gonna have algae, it's all gonna be built up. I mean, it needs to be flushed or chlorinated or something, and that's,
yeah,
thinking practically, but that's not, I mean, who's gonna make the homeowner do that?
if we get called during the call and we find out it's not working, we'll say, hey, what's going on? If we have an alarm to go off, we'll go and we'll see that, we'll mention it to them. But, man's home is his castle. Nobody goes in and starts affecting things. And
I think you'll see the day and age comes when the superintendent moves to be inspected every 3 years.
At some point.
Or they have to provide proof that they do it every 2 years.
What's the activation of the sprinkler?
By heat, like 155, 165 degrees.
Only heat. Though,
Only heat, nothing else. And typically only one goes off and maybe sometimes there's two.
Okay. Don't believe what you see on TV.
No.
So you really shouldn't be getting installed sprinkler.
Yeah, that's not a good thing. You had some homes that they opened up the front door.
Well, there are houses in the town that have residential sprinklers in.
Stanton's just sprinklered the basement up there because of, I think it was the joist, right?
TKIs,
They want to treat them.
Wiggly.
Yeah, there's a house over off of Cheese Factory, way north of, just before Harloff.
For sale.
Oh, is it? That one's got sprinklers in it. Mine does. There's one up on Route 64, just north of Cheese Factory.
Yep, one at Smith Road, Mike Robertson and Cheese Factory.
Yep. The new one on Bobby Hill.
So
They're around. But not like everybody wants to have electric plugs. It's not that.
That's only if you're not on city water. Now, municipal water, then you have to find, otherwise you put down the system.
Oh, yeah, if you don't have water, then just put the tank in, go to town, and if you're on public water, you just plug and play. You've already got, instead of making a 3/4 inch line, which most contractors don't put in anymore, most contractors don't use copper anymore either. But plastic lines, it's a 1 inch or a 2 inch, comes into the house, they put the meter in, and you upsize the meter from 5/8 to a full 3/4, and you're ready to go.
Corey, are the new houses sprinkled that you're seeing last year? Those 8 homes?
No, they're on
They're all municipal. So they, each one, I think, had a hydrant well within 600.
Wiggly's was sprinkled, wasn't it? Up on Sycamore? Wiley, Wiggly?
When it burned,
No, it was a brand
I don't think
new.
that was.
that was before. The second time he put it back in.
Got the grill a little 12 miles.
We might have said the same thing.
Are we on TV right now?
No, I don't think so.
I didn't show your bikes.
Oh.
The ground story there, you are, change your house.
Yeah.
All right, any further questions? We do have another item on the agenda for discussion and stuff like that, so.
Well, thank you for the time.
I think that that's what you're looking for support, right?
Absolutely. We want to get this, so the next time something comes up, it's like, this is what we're expecting.
So I think that's the way it's town board. We have our town board representative, we'll talk about the way that we.
I've already had it on board.
He could have gone on YouTube and watched.
I'm sure you.
Okay, Dave, I think we're all set. Thank you.
Meeting, it'll be nice, huh?
Yeah, I'll get called up for that, because I'm heading south myself. At least I'm hoping, I know there's a pretty big storm going on.
Next week, we're mild up a little bit.
I can't believe you're in New York. She okay?
General discussion tonight, we have, Village of Pine Falls sent over for, what's the name of this, Wolfburger Park. Their seeker, they're identified their intent to be lead agency. Now, they have identified that we may be lead agent. I don't think that is possible, I don't think that it's not going to be found, but this is for Wolfsburger Park, this development up here. Oh, pardon me, I'm pointing up here, behind us, yes. Yes, but it's not within the town. We have no jurisdiction. And that's DOT. And New York State DOT, and it would hook up the cheese factory if, and that's Monroe County DOT. So
They might just be notifying you as an interested agency since you're close.
They just hear about our feelings.
It really says that we may be involved.
They probably meant to.
Agency, that's what I'm thinking. Their intent to.
Yeah, we're concerned.
Yeah, an interested agency, yep. They're being overcautious. Or they don't know seeker very well, but yeah.
You tell me.
We didn't attend my course yesterday.
I had a different course to attend.
You had a course?
Yeah.
It was amazing.
Did he really?
Wow.
I'll take it. Yeah, talk about
I was
toilets.
going to, but I
They
was
talk about the toilet ladder involved.
Right, you see that?
That's a great subject. I actually know a couple of guys where that's.
There's not.
Look who wrote that.
It's a
Bye-bye.
Even Ford wrote that letter.
He's not on speakerphone anymore. So that's, I don't, no comment, is what I'm thinking.
Okay.
I asked a question because it said all additional flows, 39,000 gallons a day, and they do that on it? No. Well, hopefully we have a little bit.
I think it's, once again, it's outside of our purview. We'll talk about that later, because you haven't told me what they're asking for a lot yet. Because I know what you do like a lot. General discussion, I think is, as you guys have known, I've been nominated to run for town board in November.
Oh, what the heck, Brent?
So planning board meetings will become much shorter if I'm successful. Just so you know.
Congratulations.
Go for it. Run against me. I thought you were going for supervisor. Or do you want mayor McKees in the village?
Me and Bobby keep trying to get in the room for mayor.
There you go.
Upcoming planning board agenda, we have another meeting. Site plan approval, 2 site plans. Oh, the shops are on the 17th?
Correct. For site plan.
That is,
Amendment?
well, amendment, and that's gonna be a public hearing because they're doing work within the EPOD.
Correct. Yeah.
I had a complaint from a neighboring parcel there that they were working already and they had done a little bit of clearing in that area already.
Well,
That's the one where they're going through one site to get to the other one?
Yes, but they're
there
kind of
was
roughing the driveway in where they think it should go, and that's, I think, what's prompting them to come back and say, well, we're gonna put it here.
I think there was multiple discussions during that site plan. Are you sure that driveway is gonna work?
No, the engineer said here, he was doing things, he didn't take any notes.
I don't know. I know there was tree clearing before. I don't know. That falls on our plans board officer to.
So then we were trying to get some land there.
No, we already signed the Mylar.
That's done.
It's approved and there's, I think.
I'm still waiting on the next one, though.
I think the contractor got there and how are you gonna put in this driveway? Take it this way.
Right, so they're gonna.
Can't do that.
Yeah.
Give us that
They're supposed to be
word.
giving me when I have gotten.
Oh, no, I don't know. No, I think they're amending the site plan for a different driveway location. And that driveway location is gonna require tree removal within EPOD 7. That's our wood lot, correct?
Right, but when they put in,
Say no.
when they put in the septic field, remember for the garage or workshop with the bathroom?
Yeah.
They had some equipment in there, were moving some dirt, and then they got into, kind of scratching around towards where they thought the driveway should go. So really, they're starting to prep the site without having a permit. I think what I was gonna do is either call or write a letter prior to this meeting and advise them that they shouldn't be in there working.
They have a site plan approval, but they haven't asked for a building permit yet?
Right. And now they want to amend the site plan, so obviously they're not doing anything there right now because of the weather, but yeah, they had started working in there a little bit. Again, so.
Come on, get that first outward order. Fire it off. First one's the hardest.
Some of the few blizzards, that's a
Yeah. After a while, they come really easy.
Yes, callous and grizzled as that.
There you go.
Shut them all down. There was also discussion about conservation easement, which the general consensus is that needs to come from the town board.
Right.
Good. No, that's where I work for them.
If the town board so wishes, I think they gotta go to the town board first to see if they're even willing to entertain it.
It makes sense to me because the easement is given to the town of Mendon. So
Right.
I understand why the path is that way. And
Right.
to anyone's knowledge, we haven't given back any conservation lands.
easement lands in the past that we know
Yeah.
Conservation easements a long time.
Well, it's
But I mean-
been relief for adjustments.
Yeah, because see, we got away from that when we established the EPOD ordinance. That tells you what you can and can't do.
Right.
in EPOD.
Right.
Before it was an open, left up to language in an easement.
But to our knowledge, there's never been an easement that was amended and taken back by the property owner to some extent.
People would come in and ask for relief in the easement area.
There was the guy on, we talked to Hopper Hills Way.
Yeah, and then insured.
Somebody put a pool in there and the person wanted to take it out, but it was in the conservation easement. Or usually it's somebody is selling the home. And please don't make me rip up this corner of the patio that's in that conservation easement.
Okay.
They have not changed the conservation.
And never taken the line and shifted it.
Right.
Okay.
Not since I've been involved.
No, that was,
Okay.
that was not insured rates.
Well, but once again, it is, the consensus is the planning board should not be changing the easement. Right. That goes
Okay.
from the-
Then I'm gonna advise Jim Siggles that he would have to make a petition to the town board to change the
Well, that's
easement.
right.
Dimensions.
But then he's still within an EPOD now. So he's got,
EPOD development.
EPOD development permits if they revise that.
He's got some obstacles. We'll see when he figures it out.
That's right.
Yeah.
I gotta be honest with you.
Yeah.
That easement was there when he bought the place.
I hear you. Sure was. And it was one of 3 lots that had an existing easement on it.
And he knows.
The whole
And there's
purpose-
plenty of buildable space.
That's the
out
whole
there.
purpose of the easement. There first, you know, you can't do anything.
He can fit the house. The thing is, it's a big ranch, and I think the problem they're having is, he claims that when you're coming down the cul-de-sac, and Jim's a pretty detail-oriented guy. He one of the better builders that I've worked for and with. He likes the houses to be lined up and not have them jog back and forth so that it kind of looks out of space. So that's his contention, other than the size of the footprint. For what it's worth.
So aesthetics over environment is,
No,
okay.
that's just his bone.
That's what he's going for, aesthetics over, that'll look nice, never mind.
We're not big.
Knock down the freaking
We're close
hills.
to Victor, though.
It's every woodland and steep slope and wetland, but we can go there.
It's not a wetland anymore, we filled it in.
They did.
We put a dry hydrant in there.
Right down freaking 96. There's some hurdles on this code, holy cow. No kidding, that's wire code.
No, there isn't. And like I told Tim, we set
Yeah.
site plan for site plan for site plan, or the Mendon Fire Department, and never got a response from any of them. So Mary quit sending them.
How many times do we have to beg for a response on the Allisons?
Yeah, exactly.
The fire chief can't even renew his permit
And they're going to be part of
for
it.
his home.
I think there's a lot of hurdles, and I think we are not above the code, so we ask the town board to take care of it and possibly start requiring the fire
They
marshal.
need to create a liaison that's gonna respond, which is probably gonna be Tim DeRusser,
Well,
because
what happens is when a site plan comes in and it falls in one of these categories,
push it right
you
there.
tell Michelle, send it to Mendon Fire, and we'll make sure there's a signature line on it for the fire department. And, you know, if it's a matter, okay, instead of trying to have you going there, we want it down here, so be it.
You heard him say that they'd be he's more than happy to be the bad guy.
They don't have signatory authority. The
Yeah.
fire department, it would have to be the fire marshal.
Well, they used to sign a lot of our site plans, fire department.
Was there ever a time when the fire marshal was a fire service member? I mean, I know Larry was, right, for a while.
What's his
Andy
name?
Lancer, Bill Barnes, all those guys were in the fire department. There he was.
That was back like when Gene was around, right?
Yeah,
I remember around there being.
The bottom line is, Corey can't issue a building permit if it doesn't align with the code.
Exactly.
So if the code says the fire department, if the code says what they're telling us it says, which is it has to be acceptable to the local fire department, I'm not sure exactly if that's exactly how it's worded.
No, that's.
Right. So he's gonna make sure it does what it needs to do. and hopefully it aligns with what they want. But they don't have authority to.
Fire code, right?
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, it doesn't technically need to reach them.
Right.
It just needs to meet the code. But it would be nice if everybody played nice and everything fit together nicely.
I think putting it out there so they're all aware of it ahead of time, so we don't have amended site plans coming back for their plans.
Well,
That would be outstanding.
that's all I'm really, pointing out here. You know, I went round and round with Bill Allison about this freaking access to his property, and, you know, quite frankly, he just questioned it the whole way, and I had to just force feed him the code.
I remember who was it?
I'll say that word for you.
I'm curious now.
He's saying anyway, keep it
Yeah,
here.
3 times.
Just know Zoom stuff's never gonna work.
Yeah.
Can we redact parts of you too? Nope.
Whatever happened to executive session? Let's see here with that go ahead.
Great idea.
I think it's more general discussion.
No. Make a motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
You want to second that motion, Earl?
I didn't hear anything.
I made a motion to adjourn.
But no, clear, yes.
We're seconding it, Earl.
All in favor? Aye. Any opposed?
We're not.
I'd like to keep going for a while.
Brent is